Now, folks, I'm going to be pointing out some of the history of the Comstock Lode and the Virginia and Truckee Railroad to you along the way. Please do bear with me. I'm old. It'll be the history I remember, whether it happened or not. Now, the side of the train that faces the canyons where you've got that gorgeous 100-mile view, folks, I'll refer to that as the east side of the train. The side of the train that faces the bluff over here where you have no view, I'll refer to as the west side of the train. That way you'll know which direction to look when I point something out. Across the small canyon next to us, and atop that huge pile of tailings, you'll see the remains of the combination shaft. That shaft only brought up some very low-grade ore. It was eventually declared a $7 million financial disaster. One of the very few mines on the Comstock Lode that never made one penny of profit. Now we're about to pass underneath a 160-year-old ore trestle. Now this is how ore was brought from mines on the west side of the rails over to that crusher mill on the east side. Now when mining began on the Comstock Lode around 1860, the only way to get the ore down to the mills on the Carson River was by wagon and mule. It was very expensive, and it took up to a week for a wagon load of ore to make it down the mountains. In 1869, a man named William Sharon on the board of directors of the Bank of California thought it would be profitable for that bank to build a railroad between Carson City and Virginia City. Construction began in February 1869 with 1,500 workers employed to build the line. Coming the 21 miles from Carson City to Virginia City, 7 tunnels were dug to Washoe Mountains, and the railroad comes up near 1,800 feet in altitude, making us one of America's true mountain railroads. Those twists, turns, and curves gave us the nickname of being the crookedest railroad in the world. It took 11 months to build this railroad. The first passengers were unloaded in Virginia City in January 1870. Now, coming around the next curve, we're going to be looking down into Gold Canyon over the town of Gold Hill. Coming into view down in the canyon, the large steel roof building you will see down there at one time was the Crown Point Mill. Coming into view down in the canyon, you folks will also see the Gold Hill Hotel and Saloon. Now, this is the oldest continually operating hotel in Nevada. It opened in 1859 as a tent saloon. The stone hotel portion that you folks will see up front was added 2 years later in 1861. Now, folks, it's still in business today, just as it was in 1859. Now, coming around the curve to the grade crossing, off the east side, you'll see the monument to the Liberty Volunteer Fire Company. Now, just past the grade crossing is the 1869 station of Virginia and Truckee Railroad built in the town of Gold Hill. The V&TRR owned and operated this railroad station from 1869 until this line of Virginia City was abandoned in 1938. Now, folks, a little advance notice to look at something. If you'll look off the west side of the train up toward the locomotive, notice that little bluff of dirt sticking out toward the tracks just past the North Yellow Jacket shaft. Now, once we pass that little bluff, there's a small canyon on the west side that I'd like you to see. And the reason I want you to see that canyon is because it was at the bottom of that canyon where all of this began. That is the actual location gold was discovered here in 1859. Now, as we come around the curve, beginning our climb back to Virginia City, if you folks will look off the west 3. Tunnel number 3 collapsed around 1930. We did make an attempt to reopen this old tunnel during the reconstruction of the railroad, but folks, it collapsed once again. We built what railroads call a shoe fly right around the outside of the mountain. Now, this is the only very short portion of your trip today. You're on the original Virginia right away. We'll be returning to that right on the other side of the mountain. The original right-of-way, of course, went right through this whole tunnel. But I will assure you the view that you get from this shoe fly, it's a lot better than the view ever was from inside that tunnel. Before we go back in the tunnel, if you folks will look up the cut between the end of the bluff and the entrance of the tunnel, you'll see a large flagpole up at the top of the hill. Now, this was the site of Fort Homestead, commissioned in 1860 with 100 soldiers and 2 cannon.
Oh yeah. Ah, shit.
Now, coming up on the east side of the train is our restoration and repair shop. Folks, this is where our small crew works so hard to keep these beautiful antique locomotives and cars running in a good condition. Our shops are located at the same location the original Virginia trucking shops were built way back in 1869. Now, folks, as we come around the curve here by our water tower, our view off the west side is blocked by this little hill. But folks, once we reach our shop grade crossing, and you folks will look just above our heads, you'll see a bunch of antique mining equipment. That's the Collar Mine Tomb. And for the years he lived in our town, he wrote a lot of stories and articles for that newspaper. And while he lived in Virginia City, he also changed his name to that which we know him as today, Mark Twain. Approaching the Virginia City station, I would really like to take this opportunity to thank you folks very much for riding with me today on this little trip through history. And while you're here in Virginia City, please do take advantage of some of the shops and museums. I know you'll enjoy them. And folks, wherever your travels do take you, please do drive carefully. Thank you once again for riding with me, folks. I really do hope you enjoyed it, had a good time, and maybe even learned a little bit about the history of the Comstock Road and the Virginia Truckee Railroad. I truly do hope I did a good job for you. Well, folks, have a wonderful afternoon and evening, and God bless each and every one of you. Thank you so much.